Welcome to Startup Anthology. Whether you're new to the startup world, have a seasoned startup career, or just interested in the culture, you're in the right place. We feature the rarely heard stories from the people who define and embody startup culture. Here's your host, Jeremy Willis. Now, get ready to get inspired.
In today's episode, I sit down with seasoned entrepreneur Jake Hamann. We discuss his diverse background as a startup employee, a founder, and how he supports the local DFW startup ecosystem. Jake shares his journey from starting a banquet facility in Peoria, Illinois, to pioneering his startup in the automotive industry in the Dallas area. We'll discuss the challenges and triumphs he has encountered along the way. In my conversation with Jake, we'll highlight his passion for building startup communities, his tips for aspiring entrepreneurs, and the importance of culture fit and the value of mentorship. I hope you enjoy this episode. I have another conversation here with Jake Hamann.
Yeah,
Jake
like
Hamann.
a ham and cheese sandwich.
Ham and cheese sandwich, okay. If you would mind introducing yourself, Jake, and tell everyone who you are and some of your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. I'm Jake Hamann. I moved to the Dallas area about 3 years ago. August will be 3 years from Central Illinois, so Peoria, Illinois, which I'm sure we'll get into our serendipitous connection with a mutual contact. But moved down here about 3 years ago. Was in the economic development startup ecosystem support space for about 15 years. Had a company back in Peoria and sold that in 2016. Moved down here to take a job in economic development, supporting startups, and actually attended Dallas Startup Week in August of 21 and was convinced by a couple friends to pursue a startup I had been working on in Illinois, but it was just too small a market in the automotive space. So yeah, moved down here in late August 21, pushed the gas on that and did some cool things with that. Still doing that today. Won some awards, did some pitch competitions, all that kind of fun stuff. And then since I've been here, one of my old clients from Peoria has moved down here, their headquarters, so I'm working with them again. Now I've gotten into how do we help the regional ecosystem of the Dallas area just be better support for everybody involved in the entrepreneur ecosystem. So entrepreneurs, funders, support people, all that kind of stuff. So it's quite a varied background, but I've been a serial entrepreneur since 2006. So
how did you get started doing that? What spurred you into the serial entrepreneurship world?
I was solving a need at the time. This was back in Peoria, and my church of all places needed a place to meet on Sunday. I had a little extra money because I was living at a church and had extra dollars. So I started a banquet facility because a friend of mine knew somebody that had a space that would be able to house our church. So I didn't have any clue what I was doing and got into the hospitality industry and started a banquet facility that, Sundays the church was there, and then during the week it was available for weddings and receptions and all kinds of stuff. So in the midst of that, I had kids, and that was in 2004. And, at 4 o'clock,
right,
mornings with a newborn just didn't work. I'm like, I can't do this. So long story short, I ended up selling it to the guy that made the introduction to the owner, and he just actually celebrated 20 years in business this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was cool that it was still going, and he actually just sold off the last part of it and shut it down just in the last couple months. But always cool to see when your venture, that you get going, stay going and being successful. That was my first foray.
What about it that you like? You're a serial entrepreneur.
Yep.
What about that was like, ooh, this is cool, I like this?
Working for somebody else is not for me. Lots of people that have been entrepreneurs, they love the freedom, the flexibility, right? The make your own schedule, that kind of stuff. I like to help others and give back, and that's kind of my way to do it. So yeah, that's lots of reasons, but
right,
at the end of the day, that's the freedom and flexibility part, right?
Yeah. So what, have you worked within a startup, as an employee or manager, or just been the entrepreneur or the founder side?
And so yeah, that time I just mentioned when I worked for the man again was inside of a startup.
Okay.
That was in the data visualization space, competing with a Tableau or something like that. And I was their director of marketing. And I think having the perspective of having done it on my own and working for somebody else and just having a small portion of it where you can't make decisions, but you're not as free to kind of do not what you want. It's terrible, right? But you have a lot more constraints, right? When
you're making their dream come true, right? You're making their business work.
So yeah, it definitely made it hard, and that's when I kind of realized this is not for me.
What was the exit point? What did that look like? Was it starting your own company? Was it doing?
No, I got let go from there, and I think it was seeing behind the curtain, and I think from my perspective was a lot of that desire to lead and to be able to make some changes that, to your point, that wasn't the leader's vision. So there was just some gnashing of teeth and butting of head.
I mean, as companies grow, they go through their different stages of change.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes you just don't fit.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it was positioned to me. It just wasn't fit.
So what exactly are you doing now in the entrepreneur space?
Yeah. 3 things I'm kind of focused on right now. The first one that I moved down here for to pursue is a startup called Autix. It's in the specialty modified vehicle space. Came from a problem I was trying to solve and an issue I ran into. Quick background on that. I bought a highly modified Jeep in 2016 and bought it from a place here in Dallas. I was still living in Illinois at the time. The challenge I encountered was I couldn't get a detailed and accurate build sheet of all the mods that were on it. Right. So it had, a lift and tires and an upgraded axle and fenders and all kinds of mods. And I went to the dealer. It wasn't an OEM. I'm like, that's not everything. And they're like, that's all we have. Okay, well, this is a problem. So in Illinois, I got involved in some Jeep clubs and in the broader car community and started, I think how most things start, you start asking questions to your peers and found out, oh, well, they all have a similar challenge, right? Of if they do keep track of their mods, it's maybe they collect receipts. If you're lucky, they put it in a spreadsheet, whatever. And then it wasn't just Jeep owners. It was, tuners to trucks or resto mods, anything, right? And in a lot of cases, the older collectors have, a file folder full of receipts, right? But there's no good tracking method for that. So one thing led to the other. That was the start of the platform. And then it quickly became, as I was having conversations, and I counted this myself, is when you go to sell or even insure, what's the value of something how do you properly estimate the value of a vehicle that's been modified or especially? And there are no tools to do that, which is what we're creating, because your traditional Kelley Blue Books and some of those others, they don't take into account any of those.
They're like manufacturing features.
Basic, stuff you can get from the factory. So there's, on the insurance side, there's some specialty insurers, but it's all very subjective. It's all depending on who comes and looks at it. That kind of uncovered this need in the market of there is no tool. What we started with was kind of AI-ish. We didn't think of it that way at the time, but of course, since it's kind of come in the last 2 or 3 years, big play in the market, it's honestly what we're doing. So there's enough data out there now through several industry groups, but also historic data to be able to look at vehicles from 4 different factors. And we're building we call it kind of a patented evaluation tool called X-Estimate. So we're taking service and maintenance history, performance mods, cosmetic mods, and then social sentiment, which nobody's measuring at all, which is who's owned the vehicle, is it rare, been any races, has it won any awards, and then putting a value to that on top of historic value. So we're coming up with essentially a range, curated value metric of what should that vehicle be worth when you either go to resell it, put it up at auction, get it insured, all those different types of things. So it's evolved over time, as most startups do, right? It's evolved over time in terms of what we're going after, but we've kind of found a nice niche, a nice go-to-market strategy with where we're headed now. And we're just in the midst of getting ready to raise our Series A round that's been fun. And then in the midst of being down here, and ties back to our mutual connection, I had a business at Peoria that supported Caterpillar for several years, sold that in 2016 when my wife passed. And then the other business partners continued that business. They kind of divested from the Cat work. And then Cat moved to Chicago. And then just ironically, 2 years ago, they moved about 30 minutes from here.
Everyone's moving to Texas.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. So they moved about 30 minutes from here in the Dallas area. One of my old clients called me back up, hey, I got a project. So I'm now re-engaged with them as a supplier to them, doing marketing and innovation work with them.
So is your background marketing?
So I went to school for music ed, believe it or not.
Okay.
Doing nothing even closely related to that, other than starting a Foo Fighters cover band right now. But
cool.
Yeah, I got into branding and marketing sort of after school and have been kind of in that space for a while.
Did you fall into it, or did you pursue it, or?
I actually sat behind a buddy of mine that was a graphic designer and self-taught myself using Illustrator and Photoshop, and then really just enjoyed it. And coupling that with the business ownership and all the different aspects, it's been all this mishmash of skills kind of bringing together, and it served me well. So I don't say a generalist, but know a little bit about everything, I guess.
I've noticed that trend is like, an entrepreneur, someone in startups, and when they're in the early stages, like you're going into Series A,
right?
You need to know a little bit of everything. You're no expert in anything specific, but you are really good at a whole umbrella of things.
There's lots of people that are much smarter than me, especially in the code side and the development side, like that's not me. I can code my way out of a paper bag. I can look at it and know what I'm looking at, but to actually sit down and write code, that's not my thing. But I can tell you at the front end, like, hey, that looks good. And I want that pixel moved over 2 pixels over that way or whatever. That's kind of my background, the UI UX branding design. So,
okay. I just got into UI UX type stuff and I'm a process guy.
Yeah.
And getting into some theory of UI UX stuff was really put a name to things. That's too confusing for somebody. You gotta do it this way, and that doesn't look the same.
Yep.
And then found out, oh, there's a science behind this.
Right.
This is great.
Yeah. So. Well, I will say, like, on the marketing and branding side specifically, it has saved me more money than, I mean, if I were a developer, that'd save a lot of money, right? But from getting going and getting things started with a new company, being able to have the skills to not have to pay somebody to go do the branding, to do the marketing, to create your website, to create your marketing materials. It's easily in the 6 figures, probably, of what I've been able to save of having that skill set from the beginning.
What are the other two you said?
So I've got Autix. Entivate is my consulting company. And then the passion project really has been around the regional ecosystem stuff.
Okay.
How do we, as Dallas is huge, right? And there's a lot of cities and a lot of entities in the region that are doing great things to support entrepreneurship. There's a collective of people that have been working together to figure out how do we better position DFW as a leading region for supporting entrepreneurs, right? Okay. And that takes on a lot of different flavors. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of places doing really great things. So Autix is headquartered in McKinney. McKinney has a innovation fund that funds early stage companies with non-dilutive capital. And then they provide a lot of support mechanisms behind it. So they've got some great stuff going on here in Frisco where we're sitting today. They've got both Frisco and McKinney partner with Plug and Play. So they're doing some stuff with them. There's co-working spaces. There's all kinds of community things. There's a ton of stuff going on at Fort Worth. Some of my friends are doing some great stuff in Fort Worth. There's a lot of great activity in DFW. It's just collectively as the region, it's not really cohesive and it's not really well defined.
It's a huge area. I mean, to go from West Fort Worth to East Dallas, it's just like hour and a half, almost 2-hour drive without traffic.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Throw traffic on top of that, it's forever.
Yeah, and people don't realize that. Just trying to pull all those pieces together with this collective group working behind the scenes and seeing what we can do. Austin, of course, on the map, right? Everybody knows Austin. There's a ton of stuff going on in Austin. But you look at national rankings and things like that. If the research is correct and we truly have the high concentration of tech talent in DFW, which they say we do, we don't rank well on national lists in terms of people thinking of DFW as a hotbed.
So you said that your initial thing that brought you down here was back in 2021. That was Autix, right? Yep. But why'd you stay?
Why to stay? People ask me, opportunity. Okay. It's such a big market. And where I was, Peoria, it's just a small market. The metro area was, I think, I don't want to say 600,000 total. Across like a 6-county region.
Oh, a big area.
Yeah. So, and here we're 16 counties with I don't know how many millions of people, right? And opportunities just limitless. There's, connections, all that kind of stuff. So they're doing great things. They're still doing some great stuff there. In Peoria, they've got some programs going on that the nonprofit I started there has morphed into multiple things. They're actually opening up a facility in the next, I think, 6 months or something like that. And they got some cool stuff going on. But yeah, there was too much opportunity to pass up here after I had been down here and knew a few people and knew kind of what was going on in the scene. There's just so much going on here.
Are you passionate about startup culture? Then head over to our website at startupanthology.com to join the community and share your story. Remember to check out the merch section of our website at startupanthology.com. Support the podcast and the show you love with our exclusive line of tees, hoodies, hats, and more. Trust me, you'll want to wear these at your next hackathon. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and connect with us on LinkedIn. So what are you waiting for? Dive into the Startup Anthology universe and be a part of a community. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
What are some specific moments that have been defining days? This is when I knew it was going to work.
Yeah. For Autix specifically, they have a really cool initiative that they've actually done in Houston and several places in North America and South America called Code Launch. So it's a competition, it's a pitch competition, but the award, you get the award if you're a finalist, which is you get development services from a development shop for 24 hours, like a hackathon type of thing to build you a functioning MVP. We entered that in September after I moved here, and then ended up winning it in November of 21. It was a rock and roll show type of experience. Like, they set up a stage at the end of the arena and you pitched in front of a couple thousand people maybe. And then, get up at the end and we win the thing and there's confetti and all that kind of stuff. That was just validating for me of like, okay, I made the right move, coming down here, doing this here, like meeting the right people, and that the idea has got legs, right?
Okay.
It's got potential. There's other people that see potential, and this was the right move. So that was definitely a defining moment for me. And then, seeing a project kind of finalized with the consulting side of things. And now, I think I've spent 17 years-ish in the Caterpillar ecosystem.
Okay.
Knowing people working internally as a consultant or being a supplier, and then getting re-engaged with them was another kind of defining moment of they're here, right? They're 30 minutes from here.
Yeah. And
now I'm re-engaged with them. So yeah, it's been a good experience overall. And there's probably several more moments, but those were two of the big ones here in the last, couple of years.
Well, with Autix, was there any challenges that you faced specifically that have contributed to your personal or professional growth?
Yeah, I think so. The companies I've had before have been service-based businesses on the hospitality side, and then my first consulting company was all services-based. So moving to a product company is much different. It's a very different model. You're dealing with time and materials and billable rate and project-based billing on a services company, whereas, a product company is about recurring revenue and scaling and all that kind of stuff. So that was really eye-opening for me, having had I'll say in quotes, successful startup on the services side. It's completely different on the product side. So learning the ins and outs of the terminology, the financials, all that kind of stuff has been definitely a learning experience for me of, okay, how do we scale? What's our go-to-market? Who do we target? Where's our revenue going to come from? All that kind of stuff. And we've keep pivoting. I won't say we pivot. It's always been in our purview of going after these different areas, but we realized early on going after individual vehicle owners is not the easy way to make money because of the expectations of the market of most of that stuff. Anything that's even closely or remotely close in the space is all free, right? It's a freemium model, right? And to try to go after that from the beginning, it's a long slog. It's a high acquisition cost for customers. There's got to be an easier way to go get customers.
What's your offer then?
So now, we've identified a few different markets. So high-end car shows.
Okay.
So we've done some really cool high-end car shows in Florida. It's a way for us to connect and provide a value add for the show organizer.
Okay.
That they can then turn around and provide value to their attendees that have cars, but also sponsors. And then it builds brand affinity with us, right? If we're creating profiles for vehicles that then live on beyond a given car show, right?
Okay.
So the car shows then car storage facilities they're not just storage, but they're show and tell, if you will. We have one here in Dallas called The Shop. They just opened one in Houston called The Shop. They got a restaurant and a lounge, but then the cars are stored, but then the public can come in and walk through them.
Okay.
Right. So our kind of thing is we build a QR code. Each car has a profile. People can come by, scan it, and find out the information.
Okay.
And then by collecting all that, we've got the data that's on the back end to be able to generate that value.
Okay.
So one of the events we did in Florida was with Ferrari Club down there. There's Ferrari clubs, there's Lambo clubs, there's clubs for every kind of vehicle, honestly. And for them, it's about rallies even, right? There's a value add for them of you do it one time and now you've got a profile that lives with your vehicle that can be transferred from owner to owner. You can keep track of your mods, all that kind of stuff. So,
well, that's cool.
Yeah. Our goal eventually, of course, is to get to the mass, B2C type of thing at your local car shows and, have a booth set up. People can come create their profile right there. But like I said, that's, a freemium model where, that doesn't ring the cash register right away.
Right.
That'll be our strategy down the road.
How has those challenges that you faced, have you grown within those? How have you developed and learned?
Yeah.
Well, what have you learned through them?
Well, I think it's forced me to, back to my earlier comment around there's a lot of people that are much smarter than I in a lot of different areas. So I've been able to build, at least on the Autix side, is build a great board of advisors, right? That are experienced, that have expertise, not just in the automotive industry, but just in growing startups and getting me to kind of think about a lot of those things that, I haven't thought about as a first-time product founder. And that's kind of how we honestly landed at this go-to-market model around these shows and things like that. Of, okay, there's lots of ways to make money, right? There's lots of ways to go after it, but what are the ones that you know the best and then have the most opportunity? So I think that board of advisors really helped kind of drive that direction, and just, encouraging anybody that's got something that's going, like, having a board of advisors is really important.
Directors or just advisors that advise you specifically?
Yeah, they're more just advising the company.
Okay.
So I think it was one of my friends or one of the advisors, like, here's a template for engaging advisory board members to give them it's a very small piece of equity, right, later down the road type of thing, but some incentive, right, to participate in quarterly, biannually, board meeting types of things. And then there's been several that have, actively engaged much beyond that, just because they believe in what we're trying to do. They're in the industry, they see the opportunity type of stuff. So yeah, it's been good from a growth perspective. They stretch and, make you think about things that you haven't thought of. And that's, even right now, I'm in the midst of trying to map out, long-term value and customer acquisition costs, and actually I think I've asked 3 of them, like, there aren't any good templates for calculating what is the long-term value of one of our customers. And we've decided recently on the automotive side, we can't measure it by the customer, we measure it by the vehicle. So the vehicle is the asset, but then interacts with our platform at multiple points and generates, like, revenue at multiple points of its life cycle, not necessarily the customer. So that was all something that, was a learning that kind of came of talking to advisors and testing out the business model and all that kind of stuff.
Speaking of board advisors, have you had a mentor personally in your career, or
not one that's been consistent across the board?
But during different stages?
Just during different stages. Yeah. And having a couple has been good.
Perspective from
from multiple angles, I think, has been really valuable. Of, you get thesis from one and you can test it against somebody else's and kind of arrive at a middle ground type of thing. Because everybody's got varied experiences, and if you don't know any better and you're in a new industry, like automotive is new to me. I mean, I've been a Jeep enthusiast my whole life, but how the industry operates, right? That's completely new to me. So having some different perspectives has been really valuable.
And the mentors and influential figures in your life, how have they impacted your experience? How has their guidance impacted your career? Are there specific examples, or?
I think in general, they've encouraged me to keep going. We're in year 3 of Autix. It's been frustrating at times to get traction. I'm not a technical person. We have had success with off-the-shelf tools and are in the midst of, our raise will go towards finishing out the build of our platform. But having them around has been encouraging to keep going, that the ideas worth pursuing, that there's an opportunity out there, that the market needs what we're doing, other than the practical wisdom of the tactical stuff. Just the encouragement to keep going, keep pursuing it, think about this, think about that, has been really good. So, and it's been validated by some other stuff too. So as I mentioned, we're kind of in that AI space now with the value metric we're trying to build. We applied for Google's, got an AI grant program. We applied for that last year and got awarded like $250,000 in AI grants from Google and AI funding from them, which was like, okay, if like a company like Google sees value in what we're doing, then there must be something there. So between the mentors and some of those things, we did a Capital One Accelerator a couple of years ago and won that. So
cool.
The idea has been validated through
those events,
through the events and through the mentors. And
So does your work with the North Texas Entrepreneurship program you're talking about, does it have an official name?
Does not.
Okay. Have you been mentoring others, and kind of like what have you been imparting on to your mentees?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's just a natural part of me wanting to give back and contribute to the community. So I've taken many meetings with, whether it's an entrepreneur themselves that's getting started or struggling with something specifically, or even I've helped some with some branding stuff, things like that. Or even the support organizations that are helping to try to do stuff. It's got an interesting lens on economic development, how it contributes to supporting entrepreneurs, all that kind of stuff. But I love to give back, and we haven't dove into it, and maybe in another podcast, but I'm really big on the mental health side of things, like my experience and stuff I've gone through and all kinds of crazy stuff. I actually did a TEDx talk last October just around navigating disruption and applying like a entrepreneurial mindset to life situations, right? And trying to be encouraging around the whole like, hey, this stuff's going to happen to you. It's how you react to it and how do you come back from that kind of stuff. So I think that's part of my way of giving back too, whether it's through conversations or I've just started recently in the month of June doing daily videos around Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Specifically, at least in this case, it's targeted towards men because, as I went through these things, like there weren't a lot of resources. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, as we know. Like it's tough. It's a tough slog, and navigating all that, and being the provider, it's hard, right? So beyond the tactical business stuff, there's the whole mental, emotional side of being an entrepreneur too. So that's my passion of being able to give back.
I did an interview with Jason Margalis, and he talked about being addicted to startups and kind of like once you're in, and you don't want to get out.
Right.
Because I have a mental health background that I've struggled with all of my entire life. And what I've noticed is that there's this, yes, it is an addiction, and it probably meets all the DSM-5 requirements of what that is. And it's interesting that it's not talked about much, just mental health period, and the stress that sacrificing your personal time or your personal relationships to work for the company, you sacrifice all that for this one thing. And it's really difficult to navigate, especially for someone who just started in it, like fresh, like their career is the startup. All that is just very taxing if you're not able to control your reaction to the stimulus, whatever's coming in.
Well, yeah, and then it's a wide range. You go through the different, I know there's some groups that have like been pretty intentional. Fort Worth, they do a good job on this, at least with what they had over there with Sparkyard, just of celebrating, failures or things that don't work out, right? That it's okay, that it's part of the learning process. It's hard to get over that, right? You see like something you started in your baby and it doesn't make it through, it has to close, right? So that's a really tough pill to swallow. And then you think like, well, I'm a failure, I'm not going to do this again. I had a point, and I don't remember when this was, but I think it was after I had that role where I did work it was for a startup, but it was still in working for somebody else. After I left that, I gained 100 pounds when I worked there. And then like I was feeling pretty miserable, like the worst I've ever felt. And I kind of came to the point of like, I'm not doing that again. Like, it's not worth my mental health to do that again and to be that miserable working for somebody else.
Would you say your identity got wrapped up into that role?
Yes and no. I think more so I couldn't do the things I really wanted to do. And not necessarily inside work, but outside of work, because that's what I was doing, right? And I'm all in if I'm doing something, so that's what I was all in on, and all the other stuff kind of got put to the side. So it makes it tough when you're not able to pursue, and I think we both realized too, like that's not for everybody. Right. Some people are totally cool with being the worker bee and going to work and doing their thing and clocking out, and that's cool. Like the world needs those people to make the world go around. So there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it just wasn't for me. I had to have a conversation with my dad at one point about that too, because 9 to 5 was a municipal guy, like pensions, all that kind of stuff. And that was the not expectation, but when things get rough, he's like, you need to just do the 9 to 5, like get the benefits, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I just can't. I'm like, hey, like that's not me. I can't do it. This is what I'm doing. So I think for people that are starting something, I know something that was valuable for me when I started my first consulting company was called One Fire, which is still going today. We were intentional about building company values early on. And trying to stick and adhere to those as we hired new people. I uncovered some cool tools, online softwares to help support that along the way. But I remember we had maybe 4 or 5 of us as part of the initial team that got going after the first 3 or 4 months. And we sat down and, on a whiteboard, I said, I don't want to be the one to determine how this company grows. I have some ideas, but I want you guys to build or write on the whiteboard like some words that you think we ought to be like as we grow up, type of thing that we should establish as our values. And we did that. And then I actually was on a trip through this initiative called Startup America and went to Phoenix and saw this cool company that had like a values book, and they had a really fun, like, here's our 6 values and here's what it means. I want to do that. So we brought that back. We had our values, we put them in a book, and then we hired based on that. Like it wasn't just a skill, a capability fit. It was what's your culture fit. And then we came across a software that it didn't do just performance reviews. It was a mix of performance and culture fit. And I think that's really, especially for startups, right? That's really important, is that understanding that, you may be technically really good, but if you don't jive with the personalities and your culture fit is not good, then it's not going to work out in the long term. So it mapped everything in like a quadrant, just like everything, right? If you're a good culture fit, a good, skill fit, like those are the employees you want to keep and nurture, right? If you're a good culture fit and not necessarily the most technical, you can be taught, right? If you're a bad culture fit and good skills, like, might be a way out, right? And then the one on the right, you're like, you never hire them in the first.
Okay.
So that was really valuable. We grew, I think like 36 people within 3 years. So it grew pretty quickly for that company. And that was like, having that culture thing was like key for us in our growth.
Be able to maintain it?
It maintained some of the, and we've actually built some of those into this new company too, is like being innovative, being on the cutting edge, giving back. So being able to, as a company, how do we give back to the community or whatever initiatives we're involved in? So it was really valuable. And I think for startups and founders, they get mired in the like day-to-day stuff and think about those things, right? And you're just hiring. But if there's a way to build any culture stuff, be intentional about it up front. I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit around like they hit a point and they're like, I hate this place, right? Like people that either left or weren't a good fit or whatever, like it was always amicable. Like nobody ever really had. And I think we went into it knowing like we hired young people that wasn't going to be their final destination, right? That they're going to work there for a period of time. They're cutting their teeth. They're just getting out of school. And they're going to move on somewhere else. So I thought that helped us build a really good, healthy team, and we were able to scale that way.
That's true, because if you're a bad culture fit, you shouldn't be there, because otherwise you make it toxic.
Yep.
But if you're a good culture fit and you have limited knowledge, you can always train. I mean, you can raise a level of knowledge. Culture you can't really change. It's kind of baked in.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
well, Jake, thanks for inviting me up to Dallas, to Frisco,
absolutely.
to this is called the Formation.
Formation,
To have this interview in person. I have my son here, and we're on our way for a huge road trip all the way from Austin to northern Idaho, back down to Austin via the Mount Rushmore, Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, and a lot of highway.
Yeah, I have a friend that's hiking in Zion right now, and I messaged her this morning. I said, "How brutally hot is it out there?" And she said brutal in all caps.
Oh, really?
I was like, oh no.
Hopefully it's a dry heat.
Yes.
Oh, please. Well, cool. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. And
my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like and follow Startup Anthology on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast provider. Your feedback means the world to us, so please leave a comment. If you love the episodes, leave your thoughts in the comments on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, take a moment to visit our website and grab some exclusive merch at startupanthology.com. See you next time on Startup Anthology.